watches TV through TDS cable? Show of hands. Who watches TV through an antenna over the air? Okay, right. Who watches TV through direct TV? Nobody? And Dish, by chance? All right, we're having a little problem with Dish right now, so we apologize for that scenario. Anyway, what I want to do today is I'm on the advertising side of things at the TV station, so I'm not a news guy. I've been doing the advertising for 30 some odd years, but what we wanted to try to do today is try to share with you is it's not what news goes on the air, because that's a whole different deal, but how does the news get on the air? And that's what we're going to try and share with you. And if you want to come see this, the best way that I can describe it is, first off, does anyone know more about, when I say Central Oregon Daily, what does that mean to anybody? Does that mean anything to anybody?
Zolo Media.
Okay, what does that mean?
That's a company that does the local programming for the cable company.
Okay. Yeah, so does it mean anything else to anybody else?
Little did I know.
Okay, yep, one of our segments in the morning on Friday afternoons. Yeah. Well,
before you can go to hear old history of the area.
Yeah, the little did I know. Yeah, it's really a fun segment.
War stories.
Every Monday we feature a local veteran, and one of the things that makes this TV station different than any other TV stations is those two features, which are considered long format features that most television stations, doesn't matter if you're in New York, LA, Chicago, the Bay Area, or a small town in the middle of Montana, is they don't dedicate a very specific topic and have it run 5 days a week. And when you look at television production, you'll see multiple camera angles, and those are some of the things that really separate us from other TV stations. Well, what I'm going to try and do here is, again, it's not really showing much, so I'm really...
You're doing fine.
We don't know where
the morning show. Okay, so we talk about the morning show. Anyone want to guess what time the morning show guys show up for work?
3 o'clock.
They wake up at 3, and I was with Scott last night, and so they wake up at 3. They're in the building by 4, but we actually have a behind the scenes guy that starts at 11 o'clock at night, and his shift is 11 o'clock at night to like 8 in the morning, and that's Jacob in the morning. And so typically what happens is the morning show is there, and then you will recognize Scott and Emily and Megan in the morning, and they're there early in the morning, and we brand our news, even though it's in the same room, and I've got some little swag stuff here for you guys. But Good Morning Central Oregon, that's the name of our morning news. And we brand it a little bit differently than we do the evening news, which is called Central Oregon Daily News, and yet it's all done in the same room, in the same equipment. All we do is we move one desk to the side, because the morning show has a little bit different look than the evening show, and it's just a desk that just gets moved out and one gets moved in. So that's what happens there. And so what happens is you sit there and go, how do you guys decide what stories go on the air? And how do stories get on the air? People send us press releases. They may come from the police department, they may come from the power company, they may come from a local business. They send us information. We also get information when a reporter, and this is very important because a reporter may say to the news team, I want to do a story on blank. And they'll have these discussions. Every morning at 9 o'clock, all the reporters and the news director get together in the newsroom, and that's what this picture is there. And they have heated debates about what's gonna go on the air that particular night. Someone may want to do a story about what's happening with homelessness in the area, or what's happening with the traffic, or any of these things that are issues that are happening in the area. A reporter may have a very specific way of thinking about that sort of stuff. So they have these discussions every morning between 9 and 10 o'clock in the morning. And the discussions get relatively heated because one guy may have an opinion about property taxes because he's a 25-year-old reporter that's renting a apartment versus a seasoned reporter that owns a home. And the way that they look at that issue about property taxes is from two completely different points of view. And so what we try to say is, if there's not good arguments in the newsroom during the news meeting, we're not doing our jobs. So at 10 o'clock, the meeting ends and the boss says, get out, because news does not happen in the building, it happens out in the community. So from 10 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, reporters are out gathering stories, doing the interviews, gathering the footage that needs to be done. And then they come back in the morning. Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry. I've never lived in a place where, like, the ABC and CBS outlet here have you guys,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Right.
Somebody owns both stations?
Well, the way that works is because we are a franchise. We are a franchise of ABC and a franchise of CBS. And if you come from a different market, you come from Portland or Seattle or LA or San Francisco, you have the ABC local news, and it's going to be called ABC First News at 5. And the CBS News is going to be called your local news expert, CBS. So the FCC several years ago relaxed ownership rules to where one company can own multiple stations in a given market. And we decided that, so we're owned by one company, but we decided that it is better to brand our news as Central Oregon Daily. We run it on both stations.
Different times?
At different times. Sometimes it's simulcast.
In the morning.
In the morning it's simulcast at 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. At 5 o'clock at night it's only on ABC. At 6 and 7 o'clock at night it's only on CBS. And then it's simulcast at 11 o'clock at night at 11 o'clock. So anyway, that's the reason for that. But news happens out in the community. And so our reporters are going out, they're out in the field, they're discussing, they're interviewing, and then they're back in the building by 2 o'clock in the afternoon to get ready for the 5 o'clock news. And so at between 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock is when they're putting the news story together, they're putting the video together, they're completing the package, and then at 5 o'clock it is showtime. And so then, reality is there's three people behind the scenes that you never see on camera. One of them is what's called the news producer. And what they do is they take the entire hour and they have to make sure that every second from 5 o'clock to 5:59 is covered with content or some sort of story. And then what happens, and you can imagine that they pull their hair out, is like what happens over the weekend or what's going to happen later tonight when we get these breaking news stories about something happening in Washington and whatnot. All of a sudden we have to cut to a major event when this individual has already spent the whole day planning what the hour is going to look like. So it's kind of crazy for those people. So from 5 to 6 o'clock, we're doing the local news, and you have 3 people behind the scenes. One's the producer that I mentioned to you, and that person wrote the entire hour of news. They know whether it's here, we do this little taste this at this point in time, or different story here. We do the weather. The weather is interesting. We also have what's called a director. The director is the person that is, and imagine you're having a conversation with somebody, an audience, and you have an earpiece in your ear, and the person that's chirping in your ear telling you to be done in 10 seconds, in 5 seconds, while you're still continuing to talk and not stutter and keep your lines coherent. And so the director is the person that is telling which camera, which angle, close up on David, back off on Genevieve, Darrell, you've got 10 to be out. And so that's a behind the scenes person. And then you have a different person when you see if we've done an interview with someone, if we've done interviews with Alan before, or you say Alan Unger, county commissioner, or whatever it happens to be, that's our graphics and audio individual. So you have 3 people behind the scenes in the control room that are making that happen. And so reality is there's a ton of moving parts associated with putting on the local news on a regular basis, and it doesn't happen in the building in terms of what news goes on the air. It's all determined. Every morning they have that news meeting. They decide what stories are going to be on. That gets wiped clean at night, and the next morning it is they redo these news meetings, and then they decide what the news is going to be on that particular day. So, I'm bummed that I can't show you all the pictures and stuff like that. But I will take as many questions as anyone has as it relates to the news or the advertising or the television world, anything to do with sports or whatnot, because I'll do my best to answer. Yes?
Why did you spend so much time on weather?
Weather is the #1 talked about subject in America. It is the #1. So when we look at, again, driving conditions, smoke conditions, in an agriculture area that this place is, it may not be as agriculturally centered as it was, 20, 30 years ago. But like right now, hay and, any farmer that's got hay down in the field right now, they need to know if there's any rain in the forecast. So ultimately, it is the #1 topic in which Americans want to know about.
But you start with a synopsis, and then you come back later with a full-fledged thing.
Yeah.
It just looks like you're trying to fill things because you don't have news.
Yeah. It is.
That's the way it is.
Yes, it's yeah, and yeah, but that I mean, it's yeah.
About 5 years ago, roughly, we had Emily Kirk as a speaker, and that particular day we had to meet in a restaurant. But what a delightful lady! And she was doing the weather those days, as she does on the other days now.
Right.
And very, very entertaining and informative. Glad she's still on board.
Yeah, we love Emily, and my history is I've worked in this market for 35 years. Again, I started in the radio business and then went into the TV business. My son is 29. I've been in the TV business here in the Ben Redmond market for 27 years, and I worked with Emily, and many of us at one point in time did work for KTVZ, and yes, I worked there for a little while and worked with Emily, and then she left, and everyone wanted to know what happened to Emily, and I'm not sure if she's told you the story, but she left KTVZ and went to work for the city of Bend for a year or two, and then and Matt McDonald, who's our news director, and he used to work at KTVZ, and Emily was there, and then when Matt came to Central Oregon Daily, he wanted to recruit people, and we're thrilled that Emily, and how's this for a job? You get paid to go eat a bunch of food, and every once in a while you get to jump out of an airplane or ride a horse and do something fun like that. So she's got one of the best jobs in the building. Yeah.
Well, two things. One, back to the weather. I noticed at noon, they give the morning report. So if
Right.
we find out that it's still 48 degrees or 32 degrees, but it's noon. So it would be nice to have a current weather when you do those updates. But
Okay.
the other thing I especially like is all of the, human interest stories that you do, like whether it's Little Did I Know, the food thing, the war heroes, the history lessons. I think those are just really well done.
Yeah, thank you. And again, it's really refreshing. And again, even though I'm 63 years old, I love going to work. It is impressive that a small little town like Central Oregon has dedicated the staff to go out and do those things. And I was telling somebody this earlier. It's when you look at television production, it is camera angles that make things look better than you might expect them. And so when we go out and do these war story segments or the Little Did I Know, we're taking 2, sometimes 3 different cameras. So what that would be is if you and I were having the conversation and I was interviewing you because you were a history, you knew everything, there'd be a camera faced on you, there'd be a camera faced on me, and there'd be a third camera facing on both of us. And so then when we're back in the editing suite and putting that story together, it's not just the same angle of the conversation. And so when you're looking at our news, hopefully you'll see examples of that. And
because some local stations, the news person has to also be their own camera person.
Right.
So
and yep,
I
that
get that, but it's nice. It's a good show.
yeah, and that's what really, again, you say, okay, what can we hang our hat on? We don't have 45 years of history in this market, so we're not going to be the guys that've been here the longest. We just have to do something different and make sure it looks different that people can notice. So thank you. Carl.
I appreciate your news product. I think it's done much better than the alleged news leader does. So, do you have any plans to have a live newscast on the weekend?
Yeah, and I was talking with Alan about that as well. Yes, we yes, but it's like when, and we've been talking about this for many years. We'd rather do it really, really well than not do it at all. And so, with everything about hiring and staffing and whatnot, I can't tell you when that's going to happen. But oddly enough, any 60-minute fans in this room here? The Sunday night repeat of our weekend news that runs at 6 o'clock leading into 60 minutes is traditionally the most watched single newscast of the entire week.
Oh, wow.
Which is bizarre. And yes, it is repeats of the top stories and the features and whatnot, but there is an audience there, and yes, we would like to do a live weekend news, but I couldn't begin to tell you when that's going to happen.
Andrew, you just need to sell more advertising.
Yeah, well, yeah. Dan.
Just a comment that my wife made, because we're directly affected, and I think so I'm not the only one in the room. With all the fires going on in Eastern Oregon, many of Central Oregonians are affected either directly or indirectly by that. Throw that into your conversation in the morning when your people talking about stories. There's a lot of people whose ranches and farms in Eastern Oregon, and there's a lot of fire there right now, need to know what's going on.
Yeah, and one of my customers is here in Redmond, Central Oregon Ranch Supply. I do their commercials. You may see them. And the Mawat family's been here forever, and I asked them just the other day about, how are their animals when it was 100 degrees out and stuff like that. But they were sharing with me about how a lot of their customers who are ranchers out in, outside of Paulina or outside of Burns or outside of wherever are very much affected by those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
This is probably not your area, and it doesn't happen all the time, but I have an issue with your commercial programming. You could be watching a program one time, you're really into it, and all of a sudden, you're shoving a commercial for 10 minutes. You miss the entire program. So, what's with that?
Well, there's specific times in the program when there are what's called commercial breaks. So that is in each program is going to have what's called a commercial break at different times and different lengths. So the only thing that we control completely locally is how often commercials air in our live news. If it's Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, an NFL football game, a Survivor on CBS, a 60 Minutes on CBS, Dancing with the Stars on ABC, we have no control as to the time nor the length in which that commercial break is. We have to fill it with something other than black air. So, yes, the challenge there is, don't be switching stuff, but it happens. Yes, sir.
If you go to the national stations, you don't get much news anymore, you get opinion. How does that impact you here locally?
Well, it's interesting because I just took a phone call last night based on everything that's happening in Washington and stories of from our senator that is from Eastern Oregon and his support of the vice president, and some people will say, well, you're not, what's the word I'm looking for? You're not balanced. You're not balanced. And the story for the last 3 days has been Biden's, pulling out of it. That's news. That is news. And I think this viewer, if I read through his mind, he would have liked to have seen, instead of seeing Merkley talk about how excited the Democrats are about Kamala Harris and the excitement and all that sort of stuff. I think this one individual would have liked to have said, okay, how is this affecting people on the street? What do Democrats feel about this? What do Republicans feel about that? And that would have been, in this individual's mind, something that he would have liked to have seen on news and been more balanced. 2 weeks ago, when former President Trump was, injured in an assassination attempt, everything for those last few days, for the few days, immediately after that, were all about him. And I got to think that those people that, there's probably people that said, oh, too bad the guy didn't get him, or thankfully he didn't get him, or whatever it happens to be, depending on what side of, your thought process is, was felt that it was unbalanced.
I was going to say, when I was young, we had Walter Cronkite and those guys. The news was pretty much the news. There was some opinion, not a whole lot of it.
Right.
Today, there's a lot of opinion. I think it's screwing up America. I think it's really messing us up.
Well, it's entertainment now, it's not news.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah, and that's, you've got you've got the Fox News channels that are, gonna, do things one way, and then the CNN and the CNBC and the MSNBCs are gonna look at things, with a slightly different tone of voice, and what we try, I guess, our best to our ability is on a local level, is do things that are human interest and not opinionated.
Yeah.
one more question. But Andrew, do you have a few minutes to say?
Yeah, I'd be happy to stick around
Okay.
and whatnot. There's some, who hasn't asked, okay, you in the back.
What are the two major trials or concerns happening in the local newscasting? What are the biggest problems that you see?
All right, first one is AI. So how is that going to affect the jobs for people that write? So and being able to get video of many things. So that's probably the number one thing that is discussed in the newsroom of how will AI be incorporated into local news broadcasts. I don't know that I could answer what the second one is other than employees, which many people are affected by these days as well. And so,
Thank you.
yeah. There's some goodies on the table if you've got kids or grandkids or dogs. That's what this stuff is for. If you want something that there's not enough, let me know and I'll be sure to get it to you. Thanks for your attention and appreciate you guys tuning in where you can.
Guys, before we go, I want to thank Andrew and his newscast especially. You guys know Rimrock Trails throws the Kiefer Magical Birthday Bash, and that birthday bash, the event is because of a young man who took his life. It's a mental health awareness event, but when we put out the press release, many of the other organizations wouldn't pick it up. They were worried that if they put something on about suicide prevention or suicide, that it would incur others to copycat. But Central Oregon Daily was brave enough to look through that. And so for that, we're so thankful for your progressiveness in mental health and other issues. I do have a gift for you, a small gesture of appreciation, a Kiwanis pen by a local artisan. And we're just so thank you for your time today. Yeah. We are going to get another picture.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
I'm sure you want to put this on maybe a feature article.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, guys, hold on. All right, guys, before we finish, remember the quote in honor of our speaker. The duty of the press is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. With that.
Thank you all.